Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be responding to this YouTube comment. It says, "Hi, do you think that maybe in the future, if you haven't already, you could do a video on how porn addiction can lead to cuckold fantasies and desires?" And the reason I want to respond to this is because I do think there's probably a lot of men who are struggling with cuckold fantasies and these desires, right? And so how does porn addiction lead to these particular desires? Well, we could go down the route of some Freudian psychology. We could delve into the trauma of the past and really try and figure out, why does someone have these particular desires? What happened in their childhood? We could do that, and it's a route that a lot of therapists would perhaps go down, but I'm going to go down quite a different path entirely. Now, if you go on the internet and you go on maybe a porn site, you could probably find thousands of videos that have this sort of cuckold agenda. And I know with certainty that this desire for that kind of content is a symptom of the porn addiction in most cases. There may be a few people who would have that desire if porn wasn't a thing, but I think that would be the minority. I really, really do. And here's the reason why. If you look at a lot of porn, you end up becoming very desensitized to the vanilla, sort of normal as such stuff that you once looked at. This happened to me. I've had a lot of desires in my life for particular kinds of porn, and I didn't have that desire when I first started looking at porn. In fact, it would have really quite repelled me. I would have been like, what the hell, like, that's so weird. And yeah, I ended up at places where I was getting turned on in a way. I had this arousal from looking at particular kinds of content. And I've talked about that on this YouTube channel before. But that wasn't there at the start. You know, it really was from watching a lot of porn. I became so desensitized to the more vanilla stuff that I entered into at the start. And this is just because the addictive part of the mind wants more and more and more. And if you look at, you know, the standard sort of porn stuff for a long time, and, you know, you kind of get used to that, your brain kind of gets a little bit bored of it in a way. And this is just the tolerance cycle in addiction. You know, if you were addicted to drugs, it'd be a similar scenario. You'd end up probably consuming things like heroin or crystal meth if you were really deep in that addiction to drugs, and you may have only started out with alcohol or smoking some weed. That can happen, right? Especially if you don't have an understanding of the addictive part of the mind and the different tactics and ploys and deceptions it will try and use to get you to engage in compulsive behaviours. So with the cuckold fantasies and desires, what can happen is you almost want this release of, well, look, I don't want to get into the neuroscience too much because I know it's not very helpful, but I do believe there's certain neurochemicals involved here, and we don't need to delve into it too much, as I say, but there's things like norepinephrine. There's like this fear, this anxiety, which gets connected in the neural pathways to the compulsive desire. It's almost like in that moment where you've got this really, really strong desire, you feel in your mind like this is such a sinful thing. Like you feel like, oh my God, I can't do this thing. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, oh, this is so bad. And you almost get addicted to this mind mood altering experience of having this heightened anxiety and like fear and like shame. And that can lead to you really sort of seeking out this particular content, like the cuckold kind of stuff, where you're imagining your own partner having sex with another person. And that is a very, very dark place to be in. And it really is, in my opinion, for the most part, you know, 99.99% of cases here, I do believe this is because people are in the porn addiction and they feel some shame and they feel some fear about stopping that behaviour. You know, they want to keep on engaging in the behaviour, but a part of them also wants to stop, and it's very confusing in the mind. And then the addicted part of the mind will swoop in and try and get you to engage in this behaviour, and you don't really know what to do. You feel helpless, you feel scared, you do feel that kind of fear in these moments when you're looking at the quite extreme content. and it just leads to more and more and more. And you end up having this self-deprecating narrative in your mind, this language which is all really quite hurtful about, is there something wrong with me? Like, why can't I stop looking at this stuff? Why do I even want to look at this stuff? Like, rationally, this repels me. But it's about understanding that there are these different parts going on in your mind. You do have a rational part of your mind that is repelled by cuckold fantasies and desires. That part of your mind's going, what the hell? Like, that's not really me. And then there's this other part, the addicted part of the mind, who doesn't really give a shit about the rational mind, the real you, and it just wants you to keep on engaging in compulsivity. And sometimes it'll even look at this sexual content that sort of repels you as a strategy to keep you deep in that addiction, to go, oh God, well, there must be something wrong with me. If I'm looking at this stuff, maybe I need to go and, delve into trauma and childhood and things like that. And don't get me wrong, there could be some stuff potentially that happened in your childhood that leads to the particular sort of content being attractive to you. And once you're in that tolerance cycle, you wanting to seek out particular stuff like maybe cuckold fantasies rather than maybe femdom or whatever it is. But that isn't the real problem, because what we need to do is deal with the addicted part of the mind. And we deal with the addicted part of the mind by training the rational part of the mind to deal with it and understand its strategies and tactics and the different ways in which it will try and get you to engage in compulsivity. So we've got to get the rational mind in control. But what a lot of people will do is they're so focused on dealing with the child self that they're trying to equip the child self and deal with the trauma. But that isn't the route to go, because if you think about having two adults, right, and then you've got a child, who would you want to protect you from one of the adults that's really strong and has some influence over you? You'd want to equip the adult to deal with the other adult rather than equipping a child. It's deal with the addicted part of the mind first, and then you're going to be able to protect the child self and sort of develop a bit of a better, healthier relationship with that sort of child self, and maybe work on the trauma and that side of things once you've dealt with these desires very head on, very directly, seeing them for what they are, seeing them as a symptom of the addiction, prioritizing overcoming the addiction, making that your number one priority ahead of anything else really in your life. Once you've mastered that, what's going to happen over time, it may take some weeks, may take months, may take less time. You're actually going to see these desires for the cuckold fantasies likely diminish, lessen and lessen and lessen, and you may even get to a point where you just don't have these desires at all, and you just see, oh shit, yeah, that was just me being in a porn addiction. That's what's happened for me personally, is I've rewired my brain so that certain desires that I had in the past, years ago, they're no longer here. Just honestly don't have them anymore. And I now look back on them and I'm like, wow, I was in quite a dark place with the whole porn addiction. So yeah, if it can work for me, I'm sure it can work for you, but it does require some work. It does require some retraining of the brain and dealing and sitting and feeling some real temporary discomfort and really changing some thought patterns and changing those neural pathways. So it does require some work. But yeah, I really, really do believe that the porn addiction can lead to cuckold fantasies and desires. And I think it can lead to all kinds of different desires for different things, which can really repel the rational part of the mind. Just remember, it's not who you are. This is a symptom of addiction. There's millions of people struggling with this. You're not alone. Thank you for listening. Hopefully this is useful to you. If you would like to learn more about the method that I've used to rewire my brain, then feel free to book in a free one-on-one discovery call with me, and we can see how I can help you. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.